Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
What celebrities have you encountered that were either really nice or really horrible? Flava Flav ate at the restaurant I work at once. He made a huge deal about having to sit somewhere private because he didn't want any attention. When it came to pay his bill, he tried to pay with a prepaid Visa that did not have enough money on it. Edit, spelling. I met Vin Diesel at a truck stop diner when I was a kid. It was like 4 in the morning and me, my grandpa and Vin and his friend were the only ones in the diner. And we ended up getting sat at the table next to them. Vin and a friend were getting ready to go on some fishing trip, which was made obvious by the clothes they were wearing. My grandpa struck up a conversation about fishing with him, completely oblivious to who he was. He was a really nice guy and apparently knew a great deal about fishing techniques. I was a bit geeked out and didn't say much or contribute to the conversation, but I spent the next hour of our road trip explaining to my grandpa who Vin Diesel was and why it was a huge deal we just met him. Met Dave Chappelle a few years back. Long story short, a friend of a friend got me and 2 friends into an after party. We were sitting at the bar when his manager offered us some shots. We talked with his manager for a while. Then Dave sat down near us. Dave was kind of sitting by himself and he looks over at us and goes, "What's going on, fellas?" And we talked to him for about an hour. We thanked him for coming to our town. Talked about music, sports, all kinds of stuff. Super cool dude. One of my favorite memories. When I was younger, my grandmother and I ran into Robin Williams eating alone in a Whole Foods. We approached him and introduced ourselves and he immediately cleared a space for us to sit and chat with him. I was pretty young at the time, so he spent most of the time trying to make me laugh by doing voices. I may have been too young to truly appreciate it at the time. But looking back, I can easily say it's one of the greatest moments of my life, and Robin has always had a special spot in my heart because of it. When I was a teenager, I met Neil Armstrong at a retirement ceremony that my dad brought me to. It was at a museum and it was a private event. There was time for everyone to wander the museum, and my dad saw Mr. Armstrong looking at one of the planes that my dad helped design. Nobody else around. They struck up a conversation and Neil asked me questions about what I was studying and how I felt about the work my dad did. My dad worked on classified planes when I was much younger. He seemed like such a gentle guy to me. A bunch of other men suddenly joined us and started asking him for autographs, which he declined. It seemed to snap him out of his happy mood, and he kind of shut down and walked away. At that time I thought he was a bit of a jerk for not saying goodbye or anything. But I recently read about the hard time he had with fame. And I guess it makes sense. My husband and I were wandering around Philly a few years ago and Don Cheadle was walking toward us. We both stopped and turned as we watched him go by. After he passed us, he turned around with a big smile and waved, winked. I just thought that was pretty cool. Samuel L. Jackson at the Calgary Stampede in Canada. He was super nice. My family went up for it because my uncle is part of the committee that organizes the Stampede every year and he got us VIP seating. I was a kid at the time and I was like, "Does your wallet really say OBAMF?" He laughed and said he left that one at home. Of course, when I told the story at school, I told everyone his wallet did in fact say that. My mom and sister met The Rock when he was still a wrestler. They had a couple car seats and tons of bags, having a hell of a time getting off the plane, and people were waiting, and then this massive guy offered to carry some things for them and they happily took the help. He grabbed some bags and held the baby carrier with my niece in it and helped them off the plane and left. After, people kept going up to them asking how they knew The Rock and they were very confused until someone explained who he was. I served Daniel Radcliffe his dessert at an event, and tripped and spilled some of it on him. Probably due to seeing that I was serving Daniel Radcliffe. And he stood up and started apologizing profusely to me. Was very sweet and asking if I was okay. Went with my parents to a function for some charity group and we shared a table with iced tea. Super nice guy. Down to earth and not high on himself. He has a mouth on him, but when he found out my dad is a retired preacher, never heard a bad word again the rest of the night. I ended up talking music and how he goes from rap to metal. Man is cool and knows his tea about the metal and punk scene. My only experience with Guy Fieri thus far was cordial. Did a guest presentation for us and took plenty of photos. But every time there's a wildfire or other depressing thing going on around here, he has his second responder crew ready to feed and care for all the first responders. I was working on a set once where John C. Reilly acted as one of the main characters. It was a pretty small set and low budget, not even sure if the show ever aired, so we all found ourselves working closely together for the most part. I sat across from him during lunch one day and we chatted for a bit about random stuff. The guy talks the same way he acts. Which is why I think he plays such a great character in any comedy, because he quite literally plays his own attitude in many roles. At least it seems. But anyway, he was a very nice and down-to-earth guy. I found it hard not to giggle every time he spoke because I just couldn't shake the image in my head of all the roles he's played. I met John Candy on a plane when I was a little kid while traveling with my family. He was a big man. He had the whole row to himself in front of us with the armrest up between seats so he could be more comfortable. The stewardesses were blocking anyone from coming up and bothering him, even though they themselves were not exactly leaving him alone, what with talking to him constantly and laughing at his enjoyable banter the whole trip. At some point he got up to go to the bathroom. When he came back he looked at me, pretended to do a double take like he was surprised and said, "Hey, you're the quietest kid ever. Don't you talk?" The way he said it was so friendly that I just smiled and giggled. Then he had a pleasant conversation with my parents, who had been dying to talk to him the entire flight, but were too polite to bother him. Not even 2 weeks later we heard he had passed. I had a chance to work with Whitney Houston for 8 days on a film set. I was working as an extra. She was nice, kind and personable. Her beauty was more striking in person. She was very professional, she did not miss a mark or a cue. Everybody on the set cried when she sang. Whitney Houston was very nice to me and complimentary. She spoke sweetly and in a motherly tone when she greeted people. I can still remember her friendly greetings when she arrived on set every day. That was one of best experiences of my life and best experiences working on a film set. I learned a lot from her about professionalism on a film set. I also saw how hard she worked. She was there 12 hours a day and on point every minute. I watched how she interacted with the director, other actors and crew. She was even encouraging to other actors and performers in the film, even the extras. It was heartbreaking when she passed. I still have the dress that I wore in that film. She admired and complimented me about the dress. An actor, musician I know was booked to perform at the event Whitney Houston was to be at the day she passed. He was also staying at the same hotel. He called me and told me she was gone, then he started to cry. Bumped into Gordon Ramsay in the lift in a hotel in Hong Kong. He was very friendly. We didn't talk to him or ask for a picture. I just blurted out, "You're Gordon Ramsay," and he acknowledged and smiled. He insisted on us going first because we had our suitcases with us. Wished us a nice day. Said bye several times when we saw him in the lobby again. Very friendly. I met a few celebs working as an event photographer for fundraisers from time to time. Chevy Chase. Well, the stories are true. He was a huge jerk. Jamie Lee Curtis was one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Bar none, and easily the nicest celeb I met working the camera. Very considerate and thoughtful person. She kept checking with us to see if she could do anything for us or if we needed any more shots she could help with. Great sense of humor too. I ran into Adam Sandler outside of a Planet Fitness in Brooklyn in early 2016. As I was leaving the Planet Fitness, it looked like he was walking in. We made eye contact, so I stopped and held the door for him. He got to the door and stopped right before he walked through. In one of those fake poses that little kids make when you tell them to freeze. I stood there holding the door, plenty confused. For about 5 seconds. We just stood there, him motionless and I standing there holding the door. Finally, he turned his head and said in the stereotypical Adam Sandler voice, "Ah, who we kidding, I'm not going in there." Giant grin on his face. We both laughed and then he continued down the street. Awesome. When my dad was about 9, 1964-ish, he was on a plane from LA to Heathrow in coach with his mom. The stewardess came back and excitedly asked him if he wanted to meet a Beatle. My dad said sure but didn't really know the Beatles at that age. And only said yes because that's kinda what you do at that age. He sat on the couch next to George. Different time. Airlines treated you like people. George folds up his newspaper and says, "Sue, do ya like my music?" My dad says, like a confused 10-year-old, No. Apparently George smiled and went back to reading his newspaper. My dad sat there like a doofus for like 5 to 10 minutes until the stewardess came and got him. So George Harrison was cool to children. And my dad's the most stone-cold 10-year-old ever. My mom spotted Robin Williams once and she went up to him and asked if she could get a quick photo. She didn't realize he was there in the middle or about to do something with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, so she waited until they were done around 20 to 30 minutes later, and then a bunch of the kids and people wanted photos with him. He made it a point to stick around and told his staff, "I think that woman wanted a photo," and made sure she got it. Mom was thrilled. He was such a humble, nice dude. For a couple years I went to a private school in Connecticut. My last year there, Bill Murray's sons transferred in. Neither was in my grade. But one of them was in the play with me. I was super nervous. But I was an SNL fan my whole life and had the 20th anniversary book that talked about all the cast members and behind-the-scenes stuff. After the show I really shyly said hi and told him I was a fan and asked him to sign it. He said, "Whoa, I haven't even seen this yet." Cool, and then told the biggest lie ever told and said I was good in the show. I was awful. I forgot all my lines. Weirdly, this wasn't the first time I saw him. When I was about 6 we were at a restaurant in New Jersey and he and his wife were at another table. Ghostbusters had just come out and I wanted to say hi but my parents stopped me. Nice dude. Edit, I've also met Big Freedia a couple times. Always super cool. Years ago, working hotel security in Edmonton, I was escorting Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers at 0400 in the elevator down from their rooms to the lobby to get in their airport limo. I am 6 feet 5 inches. And so I towered over her. Dolly looked me up and down and said in her cute southern drawl, "They sure grow 'em big up here in Canada." She was just as sweet as you could imagine. Kenny, on the other hand, and I feel bad for saying this, due to his recent passing, treated me like the help, which I of course was, and even made a huffy impatient noise when slightly flustered by Dolly's remark. I struggled to find the key to put the elevator into independent service. Dolly touched my arm, looked me in the eye, and said, "Darlin', don't you pay him any attention. We appreciate y'all." I guess I got the good and the bad in one shot. I met Buzz Aldrin and have a good story. I met him in 2009 and 2013. At the 2013 meeting, I said, "I met you before in 2009, and he said, "What took you so long to come back?" Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.